Saturday, June 20th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, let me get started right away. It's nice and quiet now. Father and mother are out, and Margot has gone to play ping pong with some of the other young people at her friend Tress. I've been playing a lot of ping pong myself lately, so much that 5 of us girls have formed a club. It's called the Little Dipper Minus Two. A really silly name, but it's based on a mistake. We wanted to give our club a special name, and because there were 5 of us, we came up with the idea of a Little Dipper. We thought it consisted of 5 stars, but we turned out to be wrong. It has 7, like the Big Dipper, which explains the minus 2. Elise Wagner has a ping pong set, and the Wagners let us play in their big dining room whenever we want. Since we 5 ping pong players like ice cream, especially in the summer, and since you get hot playing ping pong, our games usually end with a visit to the nearest ice cream parlor that allows Jews, either Oasis or Delphi. We've long since stopped hunting around our purses or money. Most of the time, it's so busy in Oasis that we manage to find a few generous young men of our acquaintance or an admirer to offer us more ice cream than we could eat in a week. You're probably a little surprised to hear me talking about admirers at such a tender age. Unfortunately or not, as the case may be, this vice seems to be rampant at our school. As soon as a boy asks if he can bicycle home with me and we get talking, 9 times out of 10 I can be sure he'll become enamored on the spot and won't let me out of his sight for a second. His ardor eventually cools, especially since I ignore his passionate glances and pedal blithely on my way. If it gets so bad that they start rambling on about asking father's permission, I swerve slightly on my bike, my school bag falls, and the young man feels obligated to get off his bike and hand me the bag, by which time I've switched the conversation to another topic. These are the most innocent types. Of course, there are those who blow kisses or try to take hold of your arm, but they're definitely knocking on the wrong door. I get off my bike and either refuse to make further use of their company or act as if I'm insulted, and tell them in no uncertain terms to go home without me. There you are. We've now laid the basis for our friendship. Until tomorrow. Yours, Anne. Sunday, June 21st, 1942. Dearest Kitty, our entire class is quaking in its boots. The reason, of course, is the upcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will be promoted to the next grade and who will be kept back. Half the class is making bets. GZ and I laugh to ourselves sick at the 2 boys behind us, CN and Jacques Concernut, who have staked their entire vacation savings on their bet. From morning to night, it's, you're going to pass, no I'm not, yes you are, no you're not. Even G's pleading glances at my angry outbursts calm them down. If you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back, but teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. Maybe this time they'll be unpredictable in the right direction for a change. I'm not so worried about my girlfriends and myself. We'll make it. The only subject I'm not sure about is math. Anyway, all we can do is wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart. I get along pretty well with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, 7 men and 2 women. Mr. Kiesling, the old fogey who teaches math, was mad at me for the longest time because I talk so much. After several warnings, he assigned me extra homework, an essay on the subject, a chatterbox. A chatterbox, what can you write about that? I worry about that later, I decided. I jotted down the assignment in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. That evening, after I finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. I began thinking about the subject while chewing on the tip of my fountain pen. Anyone could ramble on and leave a big space between words, but the trick was to come up with some convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. I thought, and suddenly I had an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Kiesling had assigned me, and I was satisfied. I argued that talking is a female trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control, but that I would never be able to break myself of the habit since my mother talked as much as I did, if not more, and that there is not much you can do about inherited traits. Mr. Kessling had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next class, he assigned me a second essay. This time it was supposed to be on an incorrigible chatterbox. I handed it in, and Mr. Kissling had nothing to complain about for 2 whole classes. However, during the 3rd class, he finally had enough. Anne Frank, as punishment for talking in class, write an essay entitled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterback. The class roared. I had to laugh too, though I'd nearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterboxes. It was time to come up with something else, something original. My friend Sane, who's good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse. I jumped for joy. Kessling was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I'd make sure the joke was on him. I finished my poem, and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with three baby ducklings who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. Luckily, Kessling took the joke the right way. He read the poem to the class, adding his own comments, and several other classes as well. Since then, I've been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. On the contrary, Kessel's always making jokes these days. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, June 24th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, it's sweltering. Everyone is huffing and puffing in this heat, and I have to walk everywhere. Only now do I realize how pleasant a streetcar is, but we Jews are no longer allowed to make use of this luxury on our own 2 feet are good enough for us. Yesterday at lunchtime, I had an appointment with a dentist on Young Jokenstraat. It's a long way from our school on Stadstimmerstein. That afternoon, I nearly fell asleep at my desk. Fortunately, kind people offer you something to drink. The dental assistant is really kind. The only mode of transportation left to us is a ferry. The ferryman at Joseph Israelcade took us across when we have asked him to. It's not the fault of the Dutch that we Jews are having such a bad time. I wish I didn't have to go to school. My bike was stolen during Easter vacation, and Father gave Mother's bike to some Christian friends for safekeeping. Thank goodness summer vacation is almost here. One more week, and our torment will be over. Something unexpected happened yesterday morning. As I was passing the bicycle racks, I heard my name being called. I turned around, and there was the nice boy I'd met the evening before at my friend's Wilma's. He's Wilma's second cousin. I used to think Wilma was nice, which she is, but all she ever talks about is boys, and that gets us to be a bore. He came towards me somewhat shyly and introduced himself as Hilo Silsberg. I was a little surprised. I wasn't sure what he wanted, but it didn't take me long to find out. He asked if I would allow him to accompany me to school. As long as you're headed that way, I'll go with you, I said. So we walked together. Hilo is 16 and good at telling all kinds of funny stories. He was waiting for me again this morning, and I expect he will be from now on. Anne. Wednesday, July 1st, 1942. Dearest Kitty, until today, I honestly couldn't find the time to write you. I was with friends all day Thursday, and we had company on Friday, and that's how it went until today. Hilo and I have gotten to know each other very well this past week, and he's told me a lot about his life. He comes from Gelskirchen, and is living with his grandparents. His parents are in Belgium, and there's no way he can get to them. Hilo used to have a girlfriend named Ursula. I know her too. She's perfectly sweet and perfectly boring. Ever since he met me, Hilo has realized that he's been falling asleep at Ursula's side. So I'm kind of a pep tonic. You never know what you're good for. Jack spent Saturday night there. Sunday afternoon, she was at Hanel's, and I was bored stiff. Hilo was supposed to come over on that evening, but he called me around 6. I answered the phone, and he said, "This is Helmuth Slisberg. May I please speak to Anne?" "Oh, hello, this is Anne." "Oh, hi, Anne. How are you?" "Fine, thanks. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, but I can't come tonight, though I would have liked to have had a word with you. Is it all right if I come by and pick you up in about 10 minutes?" "Yes, that's fine. Bye-bye." "Okay, I'll be right over. Bye-bye." I hung up, quickly changed my clothes, and fixed my hair. I was so nervous, I leaned out the window to watch for him. He finally showed up, miracle of miracles. I didn't rush down the stairs, but waited quietly until he rang the bell. I went down to open the door, and he got right to the point. "Anne, my grandmother thinks you're too young for me to be seeing you on a regular basis. She says I should be going to the Lowenbachs, but you probably know that I'm not going out with Ursa anymore." "No, I didn't know. What happened? Did you two have a fight?" "No, nothing like that. I told Ursel, that we weren't suited to be to each other, and so it was better for us not to be together anymore. But that she was welcomed at my house, and I hoped I would be welcome at hers. Actually, I thought Ursa was hanging around with another boy, and I treated her as she were, but that wasn't true. And then my uncle said I should apologize to her, but of course I didn't feel like it, and that's why I broke up with her, but that's just one of the reasons. Now, my grandmother wants me to see Ursel and not you, but I don't agree, and I'm not going to. Sometimes old people have really old-fashioned ideas, but that doesn't mean I have to go along with them. I need my grandparents, but in a certain sense, they need me too. From now on, I'll be free on Wednesday evenings, you see. My grandparents made me sign up for a wood carving class, but actually I go to a club organized by the Zionists. My grandfather doesn't want me to go because they're anti-Zionists. I'm not a fanatical Zionist, but it interests me. Anyway, I've been such a mess lately that I'm planning to quit. So next Wednesday will be my last meeting. That means I can see you Wednesday evening, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, Sunday afternoon, and maybe even more. But if your grandparents don't want you to, shouldn't but if your grandparents don't want you to, shouldn't go behind their backs. All's fair in love is war. Just then we passed Blanket Vert's bookstore, and there was Peter Schiff with two other boys. It was the first time he said hello to me in ages, and it made me feel really good. Monday evening, Hilo came over to meet father and mother. I had bought a cake and some candy, and we had tea and cookies, the works. But neither Hilo nor I felt like sitting stuffily in our chairs, so he went out for a walk. He didn't deliver me to his door until past 10 past 8. Father was furious. He said it was very wrong of me not to get home on time. I had to promise to be home by 10 to 8 in the future. I've been asked to Hilo's on Saturday. Wilma told me that one night when Hilo was at her house, she asked him, "Who do you like best, Ursula or Anne?" He said, "It's none of your business." But as he was leaving, they hadn't talked to each other the rest of the evening, he said, "Well, I like Anne better, but don't tell anyone. Bye," and whoosh, he was out the door. In everything he says or does, I can see that Hilo is in love with me. And it's kind of nice for a change. Margot would say that Hilo is eminently suitable. I think so too, but he's more than that. Mother is also full of praise. A good-looking boy, nice and polite. I'm glad he's so popular with everyone, except my girlfriends. He thinks they're very childish, and he's right about that. Jack still teases me about him, but I'm not in love with him, not really. It's all right for me to have boys as friends. Nobody minds. Mother is always asking me who I'm going to marry when I grow up, but I'll bet she never guess it's Peter, because I talked her out of that idea myself without batting an eyelash. I love Peter as I've never loved anyone, and I'm telling myself he's only going around with those other girls to hide his feelings for me. Maybe he thinks Hilo and I are in love with each other, which we're not. He's just a friend, or as mother puts it, a beau. Yours, Anne. Sunday, July 5th, 1942. Dear Kitty, the graduation ceremony in the Jewish theater on Friday went as expected. My report card wasn't too bad. I got one D, a C minus in algebra, and the rest are B's except for two B pluses and two B minuses. My parents are pleased, but they're not like other parents when it comes to grades. They never worry about report cards, good or bad. As long as I'm healthy and happy and don't talk back too much, they're satisfied. If these three things are all right, everything else will take care of itself. I'm just the opposite. I don't want to be a poor student. I was accepted at the Jewish Lyceum on a conditional basis. I'm supposed to stay in the 7th grade at the Montessori school, but when the Jewish children are required to go to Jewish schools, Mr. Elt finally agreed, and a great deal of persuasion, to accept Liz Gosler and me. Liz also passed this year, though she had to repeat her geometry exam. Poor Liz. It isn't easy for her to study at home. Her baby sister, a spoiled little 2-year-old, plays in her room all day. If Gabby doesn't get her way, she starts screaming, and if Liz doesn't look after her, Mrs. Gosler starts screaming. So Liz has had a hard time doing her homework, as long as that's the case, the tutoring she's been getting won't help much. The Gosler household is really a sight. Mrs. Gosler's parents live next door but eats with the family. There's a hired girl, the baby, the always absent-minded and absent Mr. Goslar, and the always nervous and irritated Mrs. Gosler, who's expecting another baby. Liz, who's all thumbs, gets lost in the mayhem. My sister Margot has also gotten her report card. Brilliant as usual. If we had such things as cum laude, she would have passed with honors. She's so smart. Father has been home a lot lately. There's nothing for him to do at the office. It must be awful to feel you're not needed. Mr. Kleinman has taken over Opeka, and Mr. Kluger, Giles and Company, the company dealing in spices and spice substitutes that was set up in 1941. A few days ago, as we were taking a stroll around our neighborhood, Father began to talk about going into hiding. He said it would be very hard for us to live cut off the rest of the world. I asked him why he was bringing this up now. "Well, Anne," he replied, "you know that for more than a year we've been bringing clothes, food, and furniture to other people. I don't want our belongings to be seized by the Germans, nor do we want to fall into their clutches ourselves, so we'll leave on our own account and not wait to be hauled away." "But when, Father?" He sounded so serious I felt scared. "Don't you worry, we'll take care of everything. Just enjoy your carefree life while you can." That was it. Oh, may these somber words not come true for as long as possible. The doorbell's ringing. Hello here, time to stop. Hilo's here, time to stop. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, July 8th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, it seems like years since Sunday morning. So much has happened, it's as if the whole world has suddenly turned upside down. But as you can see, Kitty, I'm alive, and that's the main thing, Father says. I'm alive all right, but don't ask me where or how. You probably don't understand a word I'm saying, so I'll begin by telling you what happened Sunday afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Hilo had left, but was supposed to come back later. A doorbell rang. I didn't hear it since I was out in the balcony lazily reading in the sun. A little while later, Margot appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking very agitated. Father has received a call-up notice from the SS, she whispered. Mother has gone to see Mr. Van Daan. Mr. Van Daan is Father's business partner and a good friend. I was stunned. A call-up means... A call-up, everyone knows what that means. Visions of concentration camps and lonely cells raced through my head. How could we let Father go to such a fate? Of course he's not going, declared Margot, as we waited for Mother in the living room. Mother's going to see Mr. Van Daan and asked whether we can move into our hiding place tomorrow. The Van Daans are going with us. There will be 7 of us all together. Silence. We couldn't speak. The thought of Father off visiting someone in the Jewish hospital and completely unaware of what was happening. A long wait for Mother, the heat, the suspense, all of this reduced us to silence. Suddenly the doorbell rang. That's Hilo, I said. Don't open the door, explained Margot to stop me. But it wasn't necessary, since we heard Mother and Mr. Van Daan downstairs talking to Hilo, and then the 2 of them came inside and shut the door behind them. Every time the bell rang, either Margot or I had to tiptoe downstairs to see if it was Father, and we didn't let anyone else in. Margot and I were sent from the room, as Mrs. Van Daan wanted to talk to Mother alone. When she and I were sitting in our bedroom, Margot told me that the call-up was not for Father, but for her. At this second shock, I began to cry. Margot is 16. Apparently they want to send girls away, girls her age away on their own. Thank goodness she won't be going. Mother has said to herself, which must be what Father had meant when he talked to me about going into hiding. Hiding, where would we hide? In the city, in the country, in a house, in a shack? When, where, how? These were questions I wasn't allowed to ask, but they kept running through my mind. Margot and I started packing up our most important belongings in a school bag. The first thing I stuck in was this diary, and then curlers, handkerchiefs, school books, a comb, and some old letters. Preoccupied by the thought of going into hiding, I stuck the craziest things in the bag, but I'm not sorry. Memories mean more to me than dresses. Father finally came home around 5 o'clock, and we called Mr. Kleinman to ask if he could come by that evening. Mr. Van Daan left and went to get Mep. Meep arrived and promised to return later that night, taking with her a bag of shoes, dresses, jackets, underwear, and stockings. And that, in the quiet of our apartment, none of us felt like eating. It was still hot and everything was very strange. We had rented our big upstairs room to Mr. Goldschmidt, a divorced man in his 30s, who apparently had nothing to do that evening, since despite all of our polite hints, he hung around until 10 o'clock. Mep and Jen Giles came at 11. Mep, who's worked for Father's company since 1933 and has become a close friend, and so has her husband Jan. Once again, shoes, stockings, books, and underwear disappeared into Meep's bag and Jan's deep pockets. At 11:30, they too disappeared. I was exhausted, and even though I knew it would be my last night in my own bed, I fell asleep right away and didn't wake up until Mother called me at 5:30 the next morning. Fortunately, it wasn't as hot as Sunday, and warm rain fell throughout the day. The 4 of us were wrapping up in so many layers it looked as if we were going to spend the night in a refrigerator, and all that just so we could take more clothes with us. No Jew in our situation would dare leave the house with a suitcase full of clothes. I was wearing 2 undershirts, 3 pairs of underpants, a dress, and over that a skirt, a jacket, a raincoat, 2 pairs of stockings, heavy shoes, a cap, scarf, and lots more. I felt I was suffocating even before we left the house, but no one bothered to ask me how I felt. Margot stuffed her school bag with school books, went to get her bicycle, and, with Mep leading the way, rode into the great unknown. At any rate, that's how I thought of it, since I still don't know where our hiding place was. At 7:30, we too closed the door behind us. Morgie, my cat, was the only living creature I said goodbye to. According to the note we left for Mr. Goldschmidt, she was to be taken to the neighbors who would give her to a good home. The strip beds, the breakfast things on the table, the pound of meat for the cat in the kitchen, all of these created the impression that we left in a hurry. But we weren't interested in impressions. We just wanted to get out of there, to get away and reach our destination in safety. Nothing else mattered. More tomorrow. Yours, Anne. Thursday, July 9th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, So there we were, father, mother, and I, walking in the pouring rain, each of us with a school bag and a shopping bag filled to the brim with our most varied assortment of items. People on their way to work at that early hour gave us sympathetic looks. You could tell by their faces that they were sorry they couldn't offer us some kind of transportation. A conspicuous yellow star spoke for itself. Only when we were walking down the street did father and mother reveal, little by little, what the plan was. For months we had been moving as much of our furniture and apparel out of the apartment as we could. It was agreed that we would go into hiding on July 16th. Because of Margot's call-up notice, the plan had been moved up 10 days, which meant we'd have to make do with less orderly rooms. The hiding place was located in Father's office building. That's a little hard for outsiders to understand, so let me explain. Father didn't have a lot of people working in his office, just Mr. Kugler, Mr. Kleinman, Mep, and a 23-year-old typist named Bep Voskeli, all of whom were informed of our coming. Mr. Voskeli, Bep's father, works in the warehouse along with two assistants, none of whom were told anything. Here's a description of the building. The large warehouse on the ground floor is used as a workroom and storeroom and is divided into several different sections, such as a stock room and a milling room where cinnamon, cloves, and pepper substitute are ground. Next to the warehouse doors is another outside door, a separate entrance to the office. Just inside the office door is a second door, and beyond that a staircase. At the top of the stairs is another door with frosted window on which the word office is written in black letters. This is the big front office, very large, very light, and very full. Bep, Mep, and Mr. Kleinman work there during the day. After passing through an alcove containing a safe, a wardrobe, and a big supply cupboard, you come to a small, dark, stuffy back office. This used to be shared by Mr. Kugler and Mr. Van Dam, but now Mr. Kugler is the only occupant. Mr. Kugler's office can be reached from inside the hallway, but only through a glass door that can be opened from inside, but not easily from the outside. If you leave Mr. Kugler's office and proceed through the long, narrow hallway past the coal bin and go up 4 stairs, you find yourself in the private office, the showpiece of the entire building. Elegant mahogany furniture, a linoleum-covered floor with throw rugs, a radio, a fancy lamp, and everything first class. Next door is a spacious kitchen with a hot water heater, 2 gas burners, and besides that a bathroom. That's the second floor. The wooden staircase leads from the downstairs hallway to the 3rd floor. At the top of the stairs is a landing with doors on either side. The door on the left takes you up the spice storage area, attic, and loft in the front part of the house. A typically Dutch, very steep, ankle-twisting flight of stairs also runs from the front part of the house to another door opening onto the street. The door to the right of the landing leads to the, quote, secret annex at the back of the house. No one would ever suspect that there were so many rooms behind that play grain door. There's just one small step in front of the door, and then you're inside. Straight ahead, you see a steep flight of stairs. To the left is a narrow hallway opening into a room that serves as Frank's living room and bedroom. Next door is a smaller room. The bedroom and study of the 2 young ladies of the family. To the right of the stairs is a windowless washroom with a link. The door to the corner leads to a toilet, another one to Margot's and my rooms. If you go up the stairs and open the door at the top, you're surprised to see such a large, light, and spacious room in an old canal-style house like this. It contains a stove, thanks to the fact that it used to be Mr. Kugler's laboratory, and a sink. This will be the kitchen and bedroom of Mr. Van Dam, as well as a general living room, dining room, and study for us all. A tiny side room is to be Peter Van Dam's bedroom. Then, as in the front part of the building, there's an attic and a loft. So there you are. I've now introduced you to the whole of our lovely annex. Yours, Anne. Friday, June 10th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, I probably bored you with my long description of our house, but I still think you should know where I've ended up. How I've ended up here is something you'll figure out in my next letters. But first, let me continue my story, because as you know, I wasn't finished. After we arrived at 263 Prinsgraten, he quickly led us through the long hallway and up the wooden staircase to the next floor into the annex. She shut the door behind us, leaving us alone. Margot had arrived much earlier on her bike and was waiting for us. Our living room and all the other rooms were so full of stuff that I can't find the words to describe it. All of the cardboard boxes that had been sent to the offices in the last few months were piled on the floors and beds. The small room was filled floors to ceilings with linen. If you wanted to sleep in properly made beds that night, we had to get going and straighten up the mess. Mother and Margot were unable to move a muscle. They lay down in their bare muscles, tired, miserable, and I don't know what else. But father and I, the two cleaner-uppers in the family, started in right away. All day long we unpacked boxes, filled cupboards, hammered nails, and straightened up the mess until we fell exhausted into our clean beds at night. We hadn't eaten a hot meal all day, but didn't care. Mother and Margot were too tired and keyed up to eat, and father and I were too busy. Tuesday morning, we started where we left off the night before. Bep and me went grocery shopping with our ration coupons. Father worked on our blackout screens. We scrubbed the kitchen floor. And we're once again busy from sunup to sundown. Until Wednesday, I didn't have a chance to think about the enormous change in my life. Then, for the first time since our arrival in the secret annex, I found a moment to tell you all about it and realize what had happened to me and what was yet to happen. Yours, Anne. Saturday, June 11th, 1942. Dearest Kitty, Father and Mother and Margot still can't get used to the chiming of the Westerton clock, which tells us the time every quarter of an hour. Not me. I like it from the start. It sounds so reassuring, especially at night. You no doubt want to hear what I think of it being in hiding. Well, all I can say is that I don't really know yet. I don't think I'll ever feel at home in this house, but that doesn't mean I hate it. It's more like being on vacation in some strange pension. Kind of an odd way to look in life in hiding, but that's how things are. The annex is an ideal place to hide in, but may be damp and lopsided, but there's probably not a more comfortable hiding place in all of Amsterdam. No, in all of Holland. Now, to up our now up to now our bedroom with its blank walls was very bare. Thanks to Father, who brought my entire postcard and movie star collection here beforehand, and to a brush, a pot of glue, I was able to plaster the walls with pictures. It looks much more cheerful. When the Van Dams arrive, we will be able to build cupboards and other odds and ends out of the wood piled in the attic. Margot and Mother have recovered somewhat. Yesterday, Mother felt well enough to cook split pea soup for the first time, but then she was downstairs sulking and forgetting all about it. The beans were scorched black, and no amount of scraping could get them out of the pan. Last night, the four of us went down to the private office and listened to England on the radio. I was so scared someone might hear it that I literally begged Father to take me back upstairs. Mother understood my anxiety and went with me. Whatever we do, we're very afraid of the neighbors might hear or see us. We've started off immediately the first day sewing curtains. Actually, you can hardly call them that, since they're nothing but scraps of fabric varying greatly in shape, quantity, quality, and pattern, which Father and I stitched together crookedly together with unskilled fingers. These works of art were tacked to the windows where they'll stay until we come out of hiding. The building on our right is a branch of the Keg Company, a firm from Zaandam, and on the left is a furniture workshop. Though the people who work there are not on the premise all hours, any sound we make might travel through the walls. We're forbidding Margot to cough at night, even though she has a bad cold, and we are giving her large doses of codeine. I'm looking forward to the arrival of the Van Dams, which is set for Tuesday. It will be so much more fun and not as quiet. You see, in the silence that makes me so nervous during the evenings and nights, I'd give anything to have our helpers sleep here. It's really not that bad here, since we can do our own cooking and can listen to the radio in Daddy's office. Mr. Kleinman and Bep Voskel, too, have helped us so much. We've already canned loads of rhubarb, strawberries, and cherries, so for the time being, I doubt we'll be bored. We also have a supply of reading material, and we're going to buy lots of games. Of course, we can't ever look out the window or go outside, and we have to be quiet so the people downstairs don't hear us. Yesterday, we had our hands full. We had to pit 2 crates of cherries for Mr. Cougar to can. We're going to use empty crates to make bookshelves. Someone's calling me. Yours, Anne. Comment added by Anne on September 2nd, 1942. Not being able to look outside upsets me more than I can say, and I'm terrified that our hiding place will be discovered and that we'll be shot. Of course, that's a fairly dismal prospect.